Creek Fire Protection District Board of Directors regular meeting Thursday, November 12th, 2015 at 18:06 hours. Director Fox, will you lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let the record show that Directors Schwartz, Rogers, and Fox are here. Director Wisniewski by phone, and Director Branch is absent. Okay, any additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay, motion to approve is printed.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that first item will take us to the public hearing for the 2015 amended budget.
Okay, so the 2015 amended budget, there's a simple line item budget available for review there for any members of the public who'd like to comment. The only change to that 2015 budget is the increase of one line item, which is the under capital on the last pages, capital expenses. Capital facilities is increased from $250,000 to $550,000 to accommodate the renovation of Station 1.
Okay, any public comment?
You just need to open the hearing first. What did you do?
Yeah,
Did you open
he did,
the hearing?
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. Dave,
Don't scare me.
excuse me.
Seeing no public comment on the 2015 amended budget, that will take us to opening the public hearing on the 2016 budget. Chief?
Okay, the 2016 draft budget is available as well, and I'm going to try to make a pretty brief summary of the budget here. To start with, we did see a 13% increase in property valuation. However, that only works out to about 1.5% overall increase in the budget, largely because the 2015 budget will include a number of grant funding, as well as obviously the other revenues that we have available during the year. We have over the last 2 years seen about an 8% increase annually, 2 years in a row, in our call volume, and we are projected to hit 1,200 calls this year, which will be up from about 1,000 calls just about 2 years ago. So it's a pretty significant call volume, and so we have a few changes in the proposed budget to kind of deal with that increase. Once again, you can see there's a projection out to 2019 showing what we're anticipating with this budget changes and the anticipated revenues and expenditures during that time. And it does continue to look fairly stable. In fact, it does slowly continue to build our reserves up from the decrease that we have this year due to the construction project that we're doing with the remodel of the building here. Property tax revenue again did go up 13%, and since then we've seen an additional 8% just in 2015 according to the real estate sales. So we're anticipating that pending any major reversal in the market, we'll actually probably see an additional 10 to 20% increase the next time that it's assessed the year after next, which is in keeping with what we're seeing with a fairly dramatic increase in the number of building permits and construction projects that have come in the last several months. Overall, on the expenditure side, we did see inflation actually slow this past year, primarily because of the reduction in gas prices. So Inflation in 2015 only fell to 1%. However, we did see a number of items that continued to increase, including health insurance and increasing projected costs of labor, as I'll get to a little bit further down. So again, we had built up to fairly substantial amount of reserves in this year. In fact, our highest reserve level ever. We are seeing that decrease going into 2016, again because we're spending out of the reserves to do the construction project on Station 1. Okay, so moving down again, specific ownership taxes have also been increasing steadily, and for the most part, the rest of our revenue sources are really expected to stay relatively flat. We're not expecting any major changes in that. We have been seeing a slight increase in the transport revenue, but as we're billing a lot more transports, but the recovery rate continues to stay low. We've been running at whereas in the past, you go back 5 years, everybody was making 70% of their billable on that. Now, everybody around is doing 40 to 45%. So it's been a pretty dramatic decrease in what we actually collect versus what we bill for ambulance transports. One of the biggest areas of that has been the Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements have dropped, and more people are on them, so that has ended up being a much lower recovery rate than we used to see in the old days. We do have grant funding included in the next year, and the only grant funding that we include is grant funding that has already been awarded. So we do have $57,000 included for the CWPP grant, which continues through next year and then into the following year. So that's guaranteed funding for us. Okay, moving on to expenditures. We do have an election coming up for board members, so that is included in the governance. Other than that area stays relatively the same. Administration, we have a couple of changes. We do have cost of living increase in salaries included in there. And then more or less it's going to look the same. I expect that we will actually see a number that is lower than what is currently in this draft, primarily because since this was produced yesterday, we did get quotes on liability and workers' comp insurance that are going to reduce those numbers significantly. So we're looking at, instead of that $60,000, the final budget should be $28,000 there. And then the workers' comp should be down just a little bit. So that's going to be closer to about the same as this year's budget in the administration area. Moving on to emergency operations, this is the one area of the budget that has the largest increase, and that's largely because we had 7 allocated positions for this year. We only had 6 of them filled pretty much the entire year because of turnover. We will be back up to 7 positions by the end of this month. And then this budget also includes adding 1 additional position sometime during 2016. What we would like to do is move from having two persons on each shift to having 3. And that's largely because of that increase in call volume, which is really impacting our ability to provide service. So by adding a second paramedic on each shift, we would be able to keep 1 paramedic back every time there's a transport, which will then allow us to respond to the next call more quickly. Currently, we've been relying very heavily on Platte Canyon to cover those second calls, or we've been picking it up as we can with volunteers. But primarily, the volunteers are EMTs rather than paramedics. So more often than not, we end up waiting for Platte Canyon to arrive to take that second call. So the other thing that we're looking at in that area is a cost of living increase for the firefighters. As we've mentioned over the past year, we've had difficulty with recruiting. We put out nationwide advertisements for paramedics and ended up with 6 applications on a nationwide search, which really indicates that our salary rates have been well below market, and so we want to continue to try to slowly bring that up to where those positions are more competitive. The other area there are 2 other areas that are fairly significant in the operations section. Health benefits went up by 8% again. And then the other large jump is the new line item for dispatch services. Over the past year and a half, all of our dispatch services have been paid by the JCECA, which is the 911 tax authority. But that agreement was that they would start out paying 100%, and then they would decrease each year the percentage that they're paying on that. So we did get our first bill recently, for the dispatch services, and we are anticipating that going into next year, we will be paying a larger portion of that. And so each year that amount is going to go up until we're paying essentially 100% of our share of the dispatching. Okay, in prevention, we have included funding for continuing our fire marshal full-time through the first 4 months of the year, and then drop it to part-time. It actually worked out. We had anticipated getting caught up on projects with having that position return to full-time for a few months. However, it was actually very beneficial in that pretty much as soon as she came on, we were swamped with building projects. So there's been we've had more building projects coming in each month lately than we had in the 3 years prior combined. So it's been a pretty significant turnaround in the construction market in the community. Training doesn't have much additional. We did bump up the funding for some fire classes in anticipation of including advanced auto extrication class and potentially a few additional wildland fire classes. Maintenance and facilities are relatively the same. Only one large addition in there, which is $25,000 for grounds maintenance, and that will be to fix our parking lots, which are probably past due for being resealed and are going to require some pothole repair as well. Again, with the grants, we did have $123,000 in 2015. That drops back to $66,000 in expenses for next year, which again are those anticipated CWPP expenses. Moving down to capital, the items that are included in capital include the large item there is $110,000 for re-chassing one of the ambulances. So rather than paying $160,000 to purchase a new ambulance, we would take the box off of one and put a whole new chassis under it and save about $50,000. The boxes are good for at least twice as long as the chassis are, so that would be an easy step for us. So the bottom line for that is that with our anticipated revenues and anticipated expenditures as currently drafted, that would put about $37,000 into reserves in addition to paying for all the projects that I just outlined.
Anything else?
That's all, so.
Any public comment on the proposed 2016 budget draft? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on the 2016 budget. Thanks, Chief, for all of our work. Okay, let's review the October 8th, 2015 regular meeting minutes.
I move we approve the minutes as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. That'll take us to the financial matters. Alan?
You have with you the report for September. As I understand it, the delay for the October financials is the same what we had last month, where the bank is not. Is that what the holdup is?
The system designs report, the
The
bill.
system design report, which is the collection.
Right, the collection.
Okay, and we're gonna try and work something out so that we take, we get the financial reporting up to current by asking system design to do something else. Like get the stuff in soon. We have expenses for the month of September. General fund expenses were $119,434, and surf expense was $54,030. I'll make a motion to approve those amounts.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The 2015 FPPA warrant expense. Do we have that before us? We have the which one?
She can get that. She said after all that. You have it.
Here it is.
Here's a copy of it, if you want.
Oh, we couldn't, because
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got it.
it's just
Stuff.
stuck.
We need a motion to exercise that one.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Somebody has to sign the original.
Looks like,
Okay.
Yeah, we'll both
Yeah,
have
all
to
that.
sign those.
all right. Anything else?
I have nothing.
Okay. Any questions on financial matters? That will take us to the fire chief's report.
Okay, so the rescue pumper, which is the last of the apparatus that we're purchasing from the mill levy program, will be inspected next week and then delivered probably the week after that. Our goal is actually to have that available to show off in the Christmas parade this year. So we're trying to make sure that that stays on target now. That will probably take us into January before we'll be able to have it outfitted and available for service. And then we plan on starting with training the firefighters on the operation of that, hopefully both in December and in January, weather permitting. The remodel project, if you haven't had a chance to get upstairs, they have got the wiring finished. They've started to put up drywall. They are still working on installing the baseboards and everything for the heat, which is the important part. But the boiler still hasn't arrived yet either, so it'll probably be a couple of weeks out before they'll have heat back in the building, which is, I think, everybody's biggest concern right now. We have a schedule that puts us completion at December 23rd, and as it stands right now, they are staying on schedule with that. So hopefully that will actually get done there. Grants, we have, we've received the compressor and PPE on the one state grant. Rescue tools have arrived with the exception of the airbags for the EMS state grant. And then we have started work on the CWPP grant. Unfortunately, after hiring a specialist for that position, he worked for a week and then walked in, said that for personal reasons he was quitting immediately, and walked out the door and left. I believe it had something to do with couldn't live here when his girlfriend was in Maryland. But anyway, so we're back to trying to hire that position again, so we're a couple weeks behind still on getting that program really up and running. The other thing under staffing, we do have the 7th position, our 4th paramedic will be starting actually a week from Monday, so we're pretty excited about that. We had a meeting on dispatch regionalization yesterday, and the update was essentially that the IGA is just about ready to be signed between all the agencies, but they don't want to sign the IGA until the 911 board commits to the funding. The 911 board doesn't want to commit to the funding until the IGA is signed, and so we're kind of just waiting for something to happen there. It doesn't really matter too much to us in that we still don't know how much we're going to have to pay for it. But we don't really have much of a say in whether it happens or not either, so we're just kind of waiting to hear when they get us kind of their funding formula and how much that's going to cost. Communications tower, we've had one engineering firm up to take a look at that. We've got another one that should be coming out sometime next week, and hopefully we'll be getting some pricing on the replacement of the tower. At this point though, any actual digging in the ground is not going to happen until the spring. Then the last thing, as I mentioned with the budget, we did get a second proposal for insurance yesterday, and it was considerably better than the outfit that we have been using. So I will be making the recommendation that we go ahead and purchase insurance from the Colorado Special District's liability and property pool that is managed by Charles Wilson Insurance Services. I do have copies of the proposals from them here, and we did go over those in detail with Charles Wilson's representatives. They meet or exceed everything that we were provided by VFIS and Pinnacle, but at a substantially lower cost. So it's going to be my recommendation that we do move to the Charles Wilson packet or program. The other things that we are looking at with this, one is going to be to increase the general liability of the district. Currently, we have only a total of $2 million of aggregate, or $2 million of liability insurance, which in most instances is sufficient because Colorado has a governmental cap on what you can be sued for. However, there are a couple of particular circumstances where the district could be sued and the Colorado cap would not be in effect. And those are, one, if it's a civil rights or harassment suit that's taken to federal court. And the second one is if there's any issues when we are out of state responding to other agencies. The thing about it is that it's only going to cost us a couple $100 a year to increase that from the 1 million to 4 million. So that's going to be my main recommendation in accepting their proposal. Other than that, their proposal, instead of, we were somewhere over 40,000 on the package last year with VFIS. Their proposal for the package, which is the liability, property, and apparatus, is 26,000. And then for the workers' compensation, we would be moving to the property and liability pool at a rate of $78,987. Whereas given what other agencies have seen for their renewal rates on Pinnacle, we would anticipate that we'd probably be spending over 100 this year. So that's significantly less expensive going with the Colorado Special District's liability and property pool.
Are there any problems in transition?
There would not be. Basically, anything that happens up to December 31st will be covered under our existing one. Starting on January 1st, we'll be on the new program.
Do we need to take action on that, or is that your?
I don't think it matters if we can just go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the budget.
It's in the budget, and so
Well, I think that's-
we'll add to that. Yeah.
Thank you for doing all the research and getting in those proposals.
We do have a concern with VFIS on the Heart Trust funding too.
We had the Heart Trust, and we also had the issue where the fire engine was out of service for 3 months this year because of problems we had getting them to pay or to agree to the amount of repair work that needed to be done to the one engine that was damaged. So we anticipate the service would also be better in addition to less
This
expensive.
to the SDA, tied with the SDA.
It's not, it's the Colorado Special Districts pool, which is a lot of the members of SDA, but it's essentially a pool of a variety of districts around the state. Okay.
All right, Deputy Chief Ware.
All right. This month we had 103 calls, 103 calls. We had 2 fires, 51 EMS calls, 12 motor vehicle accidents, 3 hazardous conditions, 29 service calls, and 6 still alarms.
But for November or October?
I'm sorry, that was October. That's a typo in there. I apologize about that. The department received aid from Platte Canyon 6 times and Evergreen twice. We provided mutual aid to Platte Canyon 3 times and once to Inter Canyon. We had 38 patient transports, and that's another typo, I don't know how I put that in there. Including 1 helicopter transport. Volunteer firefighters logged 773 hours of staffing at Station 1. The average turnout per call was 4, and wow. There were 546 hours of training, and actually this month we ended up getting in 1 last fire assignment for the season. We did have Tender 462 committed to the Hogback fire for 2 shifts. That was the West Metro incident at 470 Union Call.
Is the ratio of total EMS transports about the same?
Yeah, we've been averaging, I was going to say it's been right around between 38 and 40. I think at our high point we had 50 transports, 52 I think, 53 for 1 month. But it stayed right around, 38 to 42 consistently through the year. I mean, we're still at 103 calls, so we're still up from, I think last year at this time we were at 84 calls for the same period last year.
And we don't have the all the ice and snow yet.
Yeah, none of this has involved any real complicated commutes or anything. We've been behind on our motor vehicle accidents.
And we're down about 20 from last year for this time.
It's a good problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's probably, it's still a huge number. We're still at 130 accidents for the year. The other area where we've really seen a decrease has been the smoke checks in the summertime because, we didn't have the big fires in other areas. So normally that would have added another 100 to 200 calls that we haven't seen. So even though we're up on calls, they've been more substantial calls than in past years as well.
Any questions for either of the chiefs?
Thank you.
Okay. Any old business from the board? Any new business from the board?
I have no.
Okay. Any citizens issues? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 1837.
Thank you,
Thank
Lane.
you, gentlemen. Take care.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.